Five, four, three, two, one.
Okay, hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa. It's time for the Almost Inquisition yet again, episode 152 on Sunday the 27th of September. I'm Amish Phil.
I'm Amish Ben.
And I'm Amish Matt.
And tonight we've got Adam Stokes in the house. Adam is a religious scholar and teacher who holds degrees from Duke University and Yale Divinity School. He's also the author of From Egypt to Ohio, a Semitic origin for the giants of North America, and Perspectives on the Old Testament, diverse perspectives from ancient to modern times. Welcome to the show, Adam. It's good to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
And we were just talking before about things sort of returning to normality because you're a teacher over in New Jersey, right?
Yes. So we're still kind of doing the half and half option. So half of the students are taking classes online and the other half are on campus with me. So it's been kind of weird. I've taught fully on-campus classes for about a decade now. I've taught some online classes, but I've never taught a hybrid of both. So we're still trying to figure out everything that's going on. And with so many people being online, the internet's been kind of crap. So it's been running really slowly, and we're trying to make it work. So slowly we're making it work.
I think that was one of the fears of businesses pushing more people to work offline, was that it could ruin our internet infrastructure, might not be able to cope with it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I love my school district, but we work on, even though we get money from the state, we work on a pretty small budget. So, the AOL dial-in that I heard at the opening, brought back memories to me, because that's kind of what we're working with. And imagine freaking 800 students being on there at the same time. So
I can imagine, yeah. Now, often on this podcast, we talk about ancient history, lost civilization, myths, theology, all this kind of stuff, but we've never really talked about giants. And I think this is what we should really start with, what we need to focus on.
Great.
Because, if I went to the average guy on the street and started talking to him about some ancient lost race of giants from back beyond the historical veil, a lot of people are going to scoff and snigger and take the piss. So what's the sort of evidence that's compelled you to look into this more seriously?
Yeah, well, what really interested me, like you said before, I'm a religious scholar, and when you look at the evidence for, and I don't mean to offend anybody here, but when you look for the evidence for all of these events that, the Bible and other religious texts claim to have, there's really not a lot of evidence in it for it. So, for example, with Jesus, you have the New Testament, but outside of that, you have other Gospels and stuff that are attributed to him. But outside of kind of the religious literature, you have only a few references to him in Josephus, Suetonius, Tacitus, and others. So there's not a thing where you can say, look, we have pictures of, this religious event happening, the apostles walking on water and stuff like that. But with these giants, I found it really interesting that in a lot of places and in a lot of traditions, not just in North America, but around the world, even in Britain, you have some really just good evidence just through kind of the traditions of the people, as well as archaeological evidence, as well as pictorial evidence for these giants. And a lot of people will, come back and say that's a hoax, that's, this is crap, it's just something somebody made up. But even if, 10% of all of those newspaper articles about giants and stuff from the 19th century, even if 10% of those were correct, that's a lot, and that's very, very significant. And I think that far more than 10% of them were correct. I think people actually reported, what they actually saw. Yes, there were some hoaxes. There were some people trying to, get bling and get money from some of this and to get notoriety. But for the most part, I think the people reporting this stuff was sincere. And these reports go back centuries all the way to before the founding of the United States.
Right. So this was largely during the boom of archaeology, was it, in the 19th century?
Yeah, the late 19th century, yes.
So
yes.
what was going on? What are these stories that you're referencing?
Well, this was really the first time, at least in North America, where things are settled. So much of North America's history, United States of America's history before this time, you have the Revolutionary War, then you have the Civil War. So in the late 19th century, it's kind of a time of peace. People are able to just chill. And so they start actually exploring what is in the United States. And so they start to find, not just your average farmer Joe is finding stuff as he's plowing and stuff, but also established archaeologists from the Smithsonian Institution, from state archaeological societies. They are finding these remains of giants and these mounds and just this rich and vast culture all over the United States. With kind of the advances in archaeology and in religious studies at the time, all throughout the West, beginning with Wellhausen in the 1860s, that kind of spreads over into the United States, and people are using those same methodologies and those same I'm trying to find the right
techniques,
word. Same methodologies, same methods to do archaeology here, and they're finding some really interesting stuff that calls into question the traditional notion up to that time of pre-Columbian history, with just the natives having no civilization, no culture.
I mean, I've seen these newspaper reports. You can see, if you go on Google, you can see the newspaper clippings from the time and photographic evidence and whatnot. Yes. I mean, the question that's begging is why aren't these on display in like the Natural History Museum and stuff? What happened?
Yeah, so right around this time, the late 19th century, this is also the same time in history, Phil, if you'll recall, that the United States is fighting with the Native Americans over land. So the United States wants the Native Americans' land. They want to drive them out. And so there's a whole propaganda against the Native Americans, basically to say that they have no culture, and that the only culture that, ever existed on the North American continent is this recent European culture. So there's a propaganda both in kind of just general American pop culture at the time, as well as within the academy to kind of suppress any notion that Native Americans might have been advanced, might have a very advanced culture pre-Columbian pre-Columbian North America. And so the Smithsonian kind of is the government arm of that. And so even though a lot of this early stuff is found by a Smithsonian, Edgar Smith, who wrote the first kind of cartographical analysis of the Midwest, works for the Smithsonian, but later on his work is kind of suppressed, and any findings that kind of question this narrative of European superiority are basically suppressed. So that's why this stuff isn't more open. And even today, I was telling on another podcast about a year ago, I went to the Smithsonian Institution with my kids, and they say nothing about pre-Columbian America except for the traditional Clovis, and basically people lived in tents and clay huts up until the time that Columbus came, which is total bull crap. But that's the narrative that's being pushed. But people are still finding some of this stuff in the Smithsonian archive. So there's a very important mound that's connected to the giants called the Menorah Mound in Ohio. And for years, the Smithsonian denied that this bastard even existed. They were like, this is a fraud. This is something somebody made up. Turns out they had a map of it that a cartographer had done, a very detailed map that they found very recently, like in the past decade. So this stuff is slowly coming to light. But I think that even though we reject it now, that idea of the Native Americans being inferior to the Europeans still just so strongly undergirds American archaeology and anthropology.
I think I remember from reading when I was reading Graham Hancock's last book, America Before.
Great book.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hancock's, but I'm sure he was talking about how the Native American history was suppressed and how they would bulldoze, these sacred mounds, and it still happens. There was a story, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was in Australia, and some sacred Aboriginal site had been. Yeah. Do you remember this, Ben? Wasn't it an oil company?
Yeah, it was a mining company. I think they were mining for opal, perhaps, and they'd blown up an old, really old cave system.
I think it had been it'd been continuously habited for something like 30,000 years or something.
Oh my gosh!
But this has been prevalent in North America as well.
Yes. A lot of, in the 20th century, in the earlier 20th century, a lot of the mounds were destroyed to basically make what would become kind of proto-shopping malls and stuff like that. So we lost a lot of history there. But thankfully, like I said, in contrast to some other things, we actually have a written record of this, and not only a written record from the newspapers, but also the Native Americans' own record itself. So people will say, well, these giants never existed, where's the evidence for it? And, I say the Native Americans themselves, you're going to deny their testimony as well, in addition to, all these newspaper articles and citations that we have.
From the Native American side, is that all oral tradition?
Mainly oral tradition, and a lot of it a lot of things got messed up with the outbreak of smallpox with the early European settlers. So it kind of, and Charles Mann talks about this a lot in his book 1491, but basically instantly, if you can imagine, so we talk about, coronavirus and stuff like that, but if you can imagine like uber coronavirus that just wiped out people, just like in a day or in a week or so. And that's exactly what happened to a lot of Native American tribes. So a lot of them were wiped out so fast that only a few members retained memory of their ancient mound building ancestors, and some didn't at all. So there was kind of a disconnect there. So when Europeans asked, where this stuff came from, some of them knew and could tell the history, some of them could not.
Yeah, I think Jared Diamond goes into that in Guns, Germs and Steel. I think he describes a scenario where the virus spread so fast that settlers are arriving at villages and they're deserted. Everyone's already, the virus is
thousands of corpses.
The virus has got there before the expansion almost.
Yeah,
it's a miracle any of it survived, really.
Yeah, no, indeed. So very, very sad.
Yeah. So how does this link in with your theory of the book from Egypt to Ohio, the Semitic origins then?
So I basically argue in that book that we have migrations of these giant persons to Native America to North America, throughout human history. And I focus on a particular group, since my background's in biblical studies, what I call the Egypto-Israelites, who were kind of this fusion between Egyptian and Israelite culture that you have evidence for throughout the Old Testament. And I argue that at times of certain cataclysms, such as national disasters, such as the destruction of the temple or the destruction of the entire city of Jerusalem by the Assyrians in 722, or the destruction of the temple in 70 CE, that these Egypto-Israelites know about what's beyond the Atlantic, what's beyond basically their realm, and they go to basically North America as a place of refuge, and they set up sites and communities there. They intermingle, they integrate with the native peoples already there, and they kind of spread a lot of Semitic culture and Israelite/Egyptian culture to the people there. And that's what accounts for kind of Semitic aspects in Native American culture, some of which have still been passed down today, as well as the very Semitic inscriptions and stuff that we find. And a lot of people have said those Semitic inscriptions that we have found at these various mounds are a hoax. But there's really, if you look at the evidence closely, Phil, there's really nothing to argue against them, other than that they don't fit into the mainstream archaeological model that there's no diffusionism ever occurred.
Bit of cognitive dissonance happening there, maybe.
Yes.
With the mainstream.
Happens a lot in academia. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't fit, so we need to dismiss it.
Yeah.
But really, as late as the Romans' sacking of Jerusalem, Titus's sacking.
Yes. So there is the Menorah Mound, going back to that. I'm actually, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm writing an article about this right now for Ancient American Magazine. But the Menorah Mound, so there is, if you're familiar with Judaism at all, there is the 7-branched menorah and there's a 9-branched menorah. The 7-branched menorah is just always something that's been in existence in Israel, in Israelite tradition. The 9-branched menorah comes about because of the Hanukkah story with the miracle of the oil. So the Menorah Mound contains a 9-branched menorah in it, which would only have become popular in the late 1st century BCE or 1st century CE, which has led scholars to speculate that whatever community built this mound may have come over from when Titus destroyed the temple in 70 CE.
So is that 9-stem menorah built into the architecture of the mound?
Yes. And some people have said, again, there were some skeptics who said this is just a bird. It's not a menorah, it's a bird. But if you see the pictures, especially the one the Smithsonian has, it is clearly a menorah.
Wow. Because, I mean, I love ancient history. I read a lot of ancient history, and I'm thinking, why am I not hearing about like a Jewish... I mean, I'm familiar with the Jewish exile when the Babylonians destroyed the temple. But
586 BC, yep.
Yeah, which is the famous The Rivers of Babylon psalm story. Yep. But this is totally news to me that there could have been an exile when the Romans took over Jerusalem as well. Yes.
So which points to there being kind of multiple migrations by these giants over many, many centuries. And I think that kind of explains the variance in dates of the different mounds and the variance in Semitic culture. So some of the Semitic inscriptions, they're written in Paleo-Hebrew, which would have dated them to, for the most part, no earlier than 538 BCE with Cyrus's return. Or Cyrus allowing the Jews to return from Israel, because at that time they would have adopted a different script, an Aramaic script, and these are in Paleo-Hebrew, so those are old. But then you have the Menorah Mound, which has to date to between the 1st century BCE or 1st century CE. So I think that there were multiple migrations over a long course of time.
It's like you said, the sort of giant, it's like some sort of cultural memory that seems to be ubiquitous across the world. I mean, you talked about the British Isles. It was Gogmagog, who was supposedly the last giant of Ireland, I think. Yes. And it seems
who are from the Bible as well, but they're connected to British history as well.
Who are the other famous giants? Because I'm thinking of like Nephilim and Nimrod and the Watchers from the Book of Enoch. Tell us more about the ancient giants.
So the biblical examples, probably the best one are the Nephilim, the term coming from the Hebrew Nephal, meaning the fallen ones. And so in a lot of ancient astronaut theory, which I do love, I eat that stuff up. So in a lot of ancient astronaut theory, this is, the fall is a crash landing of extraterrestrials. I don't deny that, but I would also argue kind of an alternative argument that the word Nephal can also refer to a fallen civilization. So for myself, the giants were humans. They were extraordinary. They were extraordinary humans of extraordinary size and stature, but they're called Nephilim or fallen ones because their civilization fell from power. And if you look at where the term Nephal is used elsewhere in the Old Testament, many times, like you said, with the River of Babylon Psalm 137, in the Book of Lamentations, usually it's used in reference to a fallen civilization. I have speculated, and this is something I want to look more into, that the biblical giants maybe had come from Atlantis, or a civilization that we don't know from way long ago. Very, very old, even so old the biblical authors don't even know where they came from. Perhaps the second most famous in the Bible is Goliath, who interestingly is not really that tall of a giant. He's probably like maybe like 8 feet, which is huge, which is enormous. But we have other giants, including the Nephilim, in other biblical texts. They say they're at least like 12 or 13 feet. So Goliath is kind of small in comparison to these other giants, and they're not just in the Old Testament, but also my main job is as a Latin teacher. I teach a course on Introduction to Latin and mythology. So in Greek mythology, you get all sorts of giants as well. I think you had mentioned, Phil, on the ad, like Achilles, Heracles, all these other people. And Homer himself says that, these people weren't the same as us. They were taller than us. They were bigger than us. They were stronger for us. And like the biblical giants, they too, especially Achilles, who was a total a-hole in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, in Homer's Iliad, they were kind of bloodthirsty and violent as well.
So, I mean, it's sort of, I've heard this tied before to the flood and the story of these Nephilim, or the heroes of old, the men of renown, getting jiggy with the human women.
Yeah.
And then
had quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, and this being the reason for the flood. Is that what we're going at?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Josephus explicitly identifies the heroes of old. I don't know if chronologically this works, but he identifies them with the Greek gods. So he connects the heroes of old in Genesis 6 with Heracles. He gives this whole kind of listing of Heracles' descendants from these ancient ones, these mighty men, Ish Gabor in Hebrew of old. So he makes a connection between the Israelite giants and the Greek giants very, very specifically. Now, it's interesting that when you read in most of the Bibles, it says that the sons of God took the daughters of men. That word lakach there is to basically take somebody by force. So it's kind of basically sexual assault that's going on here. And it seems that whoever the powers that be who were superior to the giants didn't like this taking place at all, and that they brought about the flood because of this. And this is attested to not just in the biblical flood tradition with Noah, but the Epic of Gilgamesh, when Gilgamesh talked to Utnapishtim, and several other flood stories as well, including Deucalion in the Greek tales. The human beings are so bad, this guy literally makes a shish kebab of his own son and eats him. So this is attested to. Just this cruelty, this violence is attested to throughout world literature and world mythology.
Is there a Native American equivalent as well?
Yes, there actually is. So the Siketa giants were known as cannibals. So they would come to the Native American tribes and basically take their women, and they wouldn't do what the old giants did, but basically just as worse. They would eat them. And the Native Americans got ticked off about this, said we're done with these giants, and rose up against them and extinguished the giant race. But that story is very, very prevalent in the oral traditions of the Native Americans on the West Coast.
Right. I love how it ties together with the lost civilization theory with the, you could say the younger Dryas impact hypothesis, and then the universal flood wiping them out, and then maybe some survivors coming over to the Near East and and then integrating. It's all kind of
tied together.
Yeah. Where do you think the so we've gone over some of like the men of renown. What about the deities in the polytheistic religions like Baal and these characters? Do these tie into giants somehow?
I think some of them were. I mean, when you look at Gilgamesh, for example, he's described as a giant. So is Enkidu in the Gilgamesh epic. There was when I was in grad school, there was a book I had to read, which basically argued, I think, very effectively, that a lot of the so-called deities of the ancient world were really once human beings who were very strong and very powerful. So El, for example, was probably once just this really buff, really strong human being whom the tradition rose up around, and he became part for later generations. He became looked at as a god and as part of the Canaanite pantheon. I also do think bringing some other aspects in here, ancient astronaut theory into all this flood theory and stuff like that. I do think that a lot of the references to gods, especially in the Old Testament, are legitimate UFO or extraterrestrial encounters, especially with Ezekiel and the angels or Malachim. If you drop those guys into the 21st century, they would call them UFOs and flying saucers. So, does
that cover Yahweh as well then?
I think so. It's going to sound kind of controversial. I am a religious person. I'm actually a very religious person, but I always put that out there because people are like, you should see. I wrote an article on comparisons between Yahweh and Dionysus, who were actually worshipped together. We have archaeological evidence of this in the Hellenistic era. Dionysus was identified for the Phoenicians as Yahweh, and Yahweh was identified as Dionysus for the Greeks and the Greco-Romans. Right. And just the feedback I got, some of it was good, and then others were like, this is just blasphemy, and you're full of crap and stuff like that. So I always put that out there that I am a religious person. But speaking of Yahweh himself, it's interesting. I've said this before on other shows, but the name that is translated as Yahweh in Latin is Dominus Exercituus, which really means commander of the armies, which is a military designation, which might, if you know anything about Ashtar and kind of the galactic force, it seems to be kind of a military designation for this kind of group of militarized extraterrestrials who, in my opinion, were responsible for the flood because these giants were being douchebags.
So, do we think the biblical flood was the end of the Younger Dryas, the comet impact then? Is that where we're going?
I think so. I think that comet, and I said this to a couple of my friends before, I think that comet was a deliberate comet. I think it was like, something from like a ray gun in Star Wars. I'm just going to say it. It wasn't random. It wasn't just the comet got locked into the atmosphere. I think it was deliberate to get rid of these giant douchebags, literally, who were on the Earth at the time.
By who? By who, Adam? Who unleashed the comet?
I think that the extraterrestrials did. Whoever Dominus Exercitum is, the commander of the armies, commanded his subordinates, these angels, these Malachim, and they sent it down. And it's interesting because in later biblical tradition, for example, with the Sodom and Gomorrah story, it says the Lord rained down fire and brimstone, and that when Abraham went to see where Sodom and Gomorrah was, the smoke was like the smoke of a furnace. That to me is kind of like a deliberate kind of nuclear, basically a nuclear missile, deliberately shot at Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's just my personal view.
You could tie it into the sort of Prometheus theory that, if we take it that the aliens have cast the comet at us to get rid of the giants, maybe that they had some influence on the human race and they didn't like what the giants were doing. Is that? Yeah,
I think, and it's interesting. I love that's one of my favorite movies, Prometheus. I'm a big Ridley Scott fan in general, but I remember being really psyched about that movie because that was like the culmination of everything that I'm interested in. But I think that a lot of times you have what are called, these infallible guys starting over again. They realize that they've effed up, they've screwed up, and they start all over again. And you get this kind of in the biblical witness itself, where you have two creation stories at the beginning. A lot of people say that
Genesis.
So notice in the first one, there's just generic male and female, and then in the second one, there's specifically Adam and Eve. And I think, and Jewish rabbis who interpreted the text way back in the day would say the same thing. These are two different groups of human beings existing. And by Genesis chapter 2, that whatever that male and female was in Genesis chapter 1 doesn't exist anymore. You have brand new creation. So I think, there's this trial and error. So the giants were created. They clearly were just scumbags. And so the gods, the higher powers, the extraterrestrials got rid of them and started up again.
It kind of suggests that the story of Genesis starts either shortly before or at the end of the last ice age.
Yeah. I think that there's only a couple of chapters of the Bible that I think will begin before the ice age, and the subsequent flood and all of that. So, and I think, I would honestly say just Genesis chapters 1-5 are the only glimpses of what we get before all the stuff hit the fan.
Which is amazing because there was so many generations living before then. We seem to have a handle on modern anatomical humans being around for 180,000 years. Yeah, and we only have, maybe the remnants of the last 10,000 years or so. It's what was going on before then,
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I think it's like the Yuga cycle in Hinduism. Civilizations start up, they get destroyed, start up again, get destroyed, and I think that's exactly what happened. Clearly, and I don't want to knock the evolutionary model too much, but I think that human beings, like you said, as we are now, possibly stronger and buffer and better, existed for way before modern evolutionary theory claims to suggest.
Well, we've tons of archaeological evidence for other sort of hominids, don't we? We have Homo floresiensis, the Hobbit man, Neanderthal, Denisovans. It doesn't seem unreasonable to me to have another race. I mean, you seem to be quite convinced that they were human, but maybe they were just very close to human, that were, a foot, 18 inches taller on average in stature, that were wiped out at the end of the last ice age, other than a few survivors. I mean, it doesn't seem unreasonable.
I agree. And I think a lot of those different species are, attempts at, because like you said, they're in the records. So we have Cro-Magnon man, Homo erectus, and the modern Homo sapien. I think maybe all of these were, and I'm not a biologist, so I know I'm talking out of my framework here, but I think all of these maybe were existing together just as, things that, the extraterrestrials, the higher powers, set into motion. And some of them worked out and some of them didn't. And it's interesting, in the movie Prometheus, it doesn't deny evolution. In fact, it says evolution happened, but it was just set in motion by these extraterrestrials giving the DNA that produced life on this planet.
Well, we know that humans bred with Denisovans and Neanderthals. That's undisputed. Yeah. We also know that a lot of the large mega mammals died out at the end of the last ice age. So the giant sloths, the giant bears, the giant cats. So, giant humans as well. Why not? I mean, how giant are we talking?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny because there was a book in the public library of the school that I work at called The Age of the Giants, which wasn't about giants per se, like giant humans, but it was about giant animals and just cataloging all these just big ass animals who existed before the ice age, and that we have evidence for. So if the animals were bigger back then, like you said, why not the humans?
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's a book that you might really like that I read, I think it's last year, called The Genesis 6 Conspiracy by Gary Wayne.
Oh, I've not read that. So I've heard of Gary, but I haven't read that book yet.
I think you'd like it. I mean, the first half in particular, it's very heavy on Nephilim and that sort of stuff, and tracing bloodlines and interbreeding and the fall and all the rest of it.
I'll have to check that out. I'd definitely like to check that out.
Yeah, I definitely think you'd like it. Yeah, but I don't think there's any denying this sort of cultural. The fact is that it happens, that it's everywhere on the planet.
Yeah,
tends to suggest to me that it's based on something.
Yeah. I mean, across the board, you have Chinese giants, you have Irish giants, you have a very famous Irish female warrior giant. It's all South America, Africa. This is across the globe.
So, Adam, what actually got you into researching all of this? What sort of piqued your interest in giants to start you off?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Matt. So, like I said, my background is in biblical studies, and a lot of the biblical stuff, going back to what I mentioned at the opening, a lot of the biblical stuff is mythology. So you look at certain creatures who are described, and you can tell that it's kind of allegory, illusion, mythology. But with the giants, I noted that the giants were mentioned in places where it seemed to be real Israelite history. So, for example, in the Deuteronomic history about the monarchy and stuff, they're still talking about giants and having encounters with these giants. So the giants, to me, seem to be one of the things that seem to be kind of literally how can I put it, that seem to be literal about the Bible, that they're not talking about these allegorically or making or metaphorically, but they're talking about actual giants that they encountered. So this is one of the things in the Old Testament which seem to have a historical basis for me, especially when you look at the larger context of all of these stories about giants in the ancient world. So that was one impetus, just the literalness of these accounts of the giants in the Bible, as well as wanting to know more about pre-Columbian history. I've always had a fascination with ancient American history, but it's only been in the past couple of years where I've really been able to delve into the work of various researchers, various scholars, which really paint a much different, but in my opinion, much more accurate view of ancient American civilization than I was ever taught about in schools. I never learned any of this stuff in schools. I never learned it even in college or in graduate school. But North America had a vast, very fascinating, technologically advanced culture way thousands of years ago, just as much as Europe did, or Egypt, or any place else. And you don't really get that, like I said, in your standard lesson on North America. You always get that it was just primitive and nobody really settled here and did anything until Columbus, and that's dead wrong.
Would you say a comparable level of technology? Did you say comparable level of technology to ancient Egypt?
Yes, I would say comparative. Monks, I believe it's Monk's Mound. Monk's Mound, the dimensions for Monk's Mound, Frank Joseph has done some work on this, are exactly the same as the Giza Pyramid, which for me is not only shows kind of technological similarities, but also diffusionism, that Egyptian culture is kind of coming to North America and influencing it as well. And just as in Egyptian culture, although there's some controversy about this, I have a good friend, Steve Myers, who would rip me to shreds about this, but the mounds seem in many cases to have been burial chambers for the elite, for the aristocratic in North American society, just like the pyramids were burial chambers for the pharaohs in Egypt.
That's kind of like another example, isn't it, of that kind of culture, isn't it, that spreads across different kind of continents and things, because burial mounds are quite common here. Yes.
I mean, you guys have Stonehenge and all of, and then the mounds in Canada are very similar to what you get with the European mounds, and seem to be for similar purposes and advanced technologies with those. We don't know how, those stones were erected in Stonehenge, and even some of the burial mounds that you guys have, they play music, and are just very fascinating. They do stuff that is much more technologically advanced than we gave them credit for, and stuff that we still can't really emulate today.
Yeah, it does suggest like a common progenitor civilization, doesn't it? It all goes back to Atlantis, doesn't it?
Yes.
I was just going to ask when you how do you think they got there? Do you think that they kind of sailed across the ocean, or do you think they went across a land bridge, or what's your kind of idea?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't want to deny Clovis. So Clovis is saying, the theory of Clovis says that the ancestors of Native Americans crossed through the Bering Strait. And I think that's true. I don't deny that, but I do argue that there were other types of migrations as well from other groups of people, and that they intermixed with these Native Americans. And I think a lot of it was sea crossing, both Atlantic and Pacific. Scott Walter did a thing a few months back where he showed that there's basically a reconstruction of a Phoenician ship. And the Phoenician ship traveled all through the coast of Africa into about 40 miles away from Florida. Wow. And so basically proving that an ancient ship 2,000 years ago could have reached the Americas, depending on what kind of winds it encountered and stuff like that. So that is very possible. And I think that there was a lot of kind of intertravel by ship between North America and the Old World, and vice versa. And we kind of know this because of the copper that is found in Europe. Europe doesn't have that much copper, but there are huge copper mines in North America, especially in Ohio and the Midwestern region. And it seems like a lot of that copper got transplanted to Europe. And so that seems to be evidence for diffusion and for cross-Atlantic exchange right there. So I think a lot of it was by water ships. But if you're talking about the original Atlantean inhabitants, they had technology up the wazoo, so it could have been starships. Who knows? So, but yes, we definitely have evidence for travel by boat, and it's interesting because in the copper mines of the Midwest, you have drawings, basically cave art of huge ships crossing the oceans. And there's no ocean in Ohio, really. So, I mean, it's basically almost landlocked. But so where are they? Why are they drawing this stuff? So they're drawing it because this is what they did. So they would travel, from Ohio all the way through the Mississippi River out into the Atlantic and go back over to the other side, to the side where you guys are at. So this seemed to happen a lot.
Yeah, I think we have to revisit, seafaring in ancient times. I mean, we know from talking to Eric Klein about the Bronze Age that, the Near East, they could sail from the Near East to the UK without much problems, to get your tin. So, is it that much more of a stretch to go across the pond? I don't know.
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, the Polynesians have been doing this, for centuries. Going back to the Aborigines of Australia, we know for a fact that the Egyptians visited them and had exchange with them.
Really?
So this is something that happened all over. So.
Whoa, what's that? What's the Egyptians going to Australia? I've not heard this one.
Yeah, just same as kind of with the Native American tradition. In the oral traditions of the Aborigines, they have clear-cut, basically describing these Egyptian ships coming and these Egyptians interacting with them. And so modern anthropologists, when they got wind of these oral traditions, they compared it to basically archaeological evidence that we have for Egypt, and they saw that it aligned perfectly. And they were even able to date the specific dynasty. I can't remember that. So which specific dynasty? They were able to date the specific dynasty that visited the Aborigines. So these journeys were certainly possible. They knew how to, the ancients didn't know how to get around.
Going back to where we started, it does really make a mockery of the whole Columbus discovering the New World story that we've been told, doesn't it? Yeah.
I mean, I think it throws it on its head. We're so used to just things being, so separate from one another, and diffusion just really calls it into question. It shows that we're really much more connected than we've been told we are. So
yeah. It's just that it's just been so dominant, hasn't it? The European culture from the Renaissance has been so dominant over the last 500 years that it's eroded our communal heritage and our story of humanity.
Exactly. Yeah, very much so. I totally agree with that. And I think that there's a better story to be told that shows how much we're related to one another, and we sure as hell need that right now.
Too right. Yeah, exactly. We're more polarized than ever, and we need to bring. Yeah, that's very well said and very apt as well. I've got a question for you, Adam. If I could give you a time machine, where and when would you go?
I'll tell you exactly where I'd go. I'd go to Roman Empire circa 60 to 80 CE. Why would I do that?
Why that period?
That's where everything. That's like the most. So I'm a very big Roman history fan as well. I teach a lot of Roman history in my Latin class, and my favorite emperor. You British people love this. So Claudius is probably one of my all-time favorite shows. I love Derek Jacobi. I I literally, if I was not a Mormon, I would probably make a shrine to Derek Jacobi and worship him, and love him. So I told my wife if we ever get divorced, I'm marrying him, but I think he's taken. So I love the Claudian era, and basically everything from the destruction of the temple that you mentioned in 70 CE to basically the Vespasian dynasty. All of that happens around that particular time. And it's also the end of the apostolic era. So I would have just loved to have lived during that time. And my Latin's good enough. I think I could actually, punch my way around,
blend
my
in.
way around it. It wouldn't be so crazy.
Yeah, it's sort of it's the height, really, isn't it? The height of ancient Rome, I would say, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it never gets better than that, except for maybe with Marcus Aurelius, and then it just goes downhill. It just goes crap after that. So.
Oh, cool. Well, I mean, is there anything you want to add, Matt? We're getting close to time.
No, I've got no more questions.
I think it's been fascinating. I've ordered your book. It's not coming till next week, till the 2nd.
But it takes kind of a while. I don't know what's up with Amazon about that, but I mean, I'm appreciative, but yeah. they seem to take a long time sometimes. It took me forever to get a copy, and I'm the freaking author for that.
Are you working on any other books? Any new projects other than teaching?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I'll be starting a monthly column in Ancient American Magazine. I just had an article, the Yahweh Dionysus article on ancientorigins.org. And I am working on several projects now. One of them looking at comparison between, the Bible and the Book of Mormon. I'm Mormon myself, so that's one of my main projects. And then I'm looking at another project going kind of in depth with those Hebrew Semitic inscriptions I mentioned before in North America. A lot of people have said that they're hoaxes, but I've been talking to people who are the main scholars on such things as the Los Lunas Decalogue stone. And so I was able to get a facsimile of the Decalogue stone from them, and I'm just going through it now and I'm hoping to make a book out of this to show that, these Semitic inscriptions, at least from how I've looked at them, I mean, I know Biblical Hebrew, I know Proto-Semitic, I know Phoenician, they seem to be both geologically, as Scott Walters argued for, and the Hebrew that's used, they seem to be the real deal. So that's my big project, but that's going to take a while, and it probably won't be out for a while.
When do you think they date from, those Semitic scripts in North America?
Yeah, so great question. So for the Los Lunas stone, I am thinking there are actually a couple of things in there where it uses a longer consonantal form of some words, if you know Hebrew, than what you find in later the later kind of Masoretic tradition, which to me suggests that it's really old because in the history of development of the language, things go from being really big to really small. So, for example, 10 years ago, you might have said, yo, Adam, what's up? Now you would say, yo, A, what's up? So things get smaller and smaller in the development of languages, which suggests to me that it's really old, at least before 586 BCE.
Wow. So before the exile, the Babylonian exile.
Yes, definitely.
God, I mean, that would just be earth-shattering, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I think there were multiple, going back to what we talked about earlier, definitely multiple migrations at different times, and the Los Lunas is probably one of the oldest of that.
I was going to say,
wherever they landed, they got as far as New Mexico, so it's pretty impressive.
I was going to say, do you think that's probably the oldest migration?
That might be. Yeah.
Right. Amazing. Well, it's been fascinating. I've really enjoyed this, Adam.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
No problem. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, anytime.
Very nice to meet you too. You too.
Anytime. It's been great. Best of luck with your teaching and your ongoing projects.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Welcome back.
Woohoo!
The dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness.
That was our chat with Adam Stokes.
Bit of a legend.
Yeah.
Seemed like a cool guy.
Just threw in a curveball there at the end with the old ancient, what they called ancient astronauts.
Ancient Australians.
I'd like to talk to him about that if he was. But I'm not sure if he's an expert on that.
I thought the Egyptians contacting Australia was pretty mind-blowing. I hadn't heard that before.
No?
Yeah, I think we underestimate... Well, it's a common thing, isn't it? We think we're so superior and we underestimate these ancient peoples, don't we? Think they're primitive, knuckle-dragging...
Yeah. When really, those pyramid spaceships travel really quick. So you can just get to Australia in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, it's like doing the Kessel Run.
Yeah, 12 parsecs. Yeah. Makes no sense. I think we've discussed it.
We have discussed the Kessel Run in great depth. Should we do some housekeeping?
Housekeeping! Housekeeping!
Housekeeping.
Current grape.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil.
What have we got? Housekeeping. We need... what are you laughing at?
I think you're hitting the point, Phil.
iTunes reviews we need. Many.
We do.
We need many iTunes reviews. We need you to subscribe to our YouTube channel because new videos going up every week and you don't want to miss the Dave Matheson one when that drops. Because we're getting...
It's got really loud.
Sorry.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil.
Because all being well, Dave's going to do a full-on presentation about the star myths.
Excellent.
So that will require visual aids.
When's that?
Really?
When is that? Next week?
No, it's a few weeks off, but...
Oh, okay.
Subscribe now. Subscribe now so you don't fucking miss it. What else do we want? We need... You send us stuff. Send us news.
Yes, clips, news, pictures.
Yeah, messages.
Nudes and news.
No perishable items.
No.
No live animals.
Have we had any noteworthy emails or messages or reviews this week?
I don't know. I mean, we've Jamie or Jame has been back in contact. You know, the
Jamie Lannister.
The person that you called an Olympian, but actually wasn't an Olympian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he represented Great Britain at international competitions, but didn't take part in the Olympics.
That's Jamie.
So,
that's
he's
Jamie.
Cut.
Is it Jamie with the great big ring?
Jamie's big ring, yeah.
Right.
Not five interlinked rings. Have we heard anything from Portugal's answer to Ed Sheeran? Since we debuted him on our show.
Eduardo Chiranon.
That's the one.
Don't believe so.
No. We have another fan pining for some of the old days.
Go
Gav. On. He misses us when we just do an hour and a half of us just chatting shit. He said, you know.
Gotta move with the times. Move with the times, Gav.
Yeah.
Well, we might do the odd one, like we did with the 150, but it just gets a bit loosey-goosey, and I drink half a bottle of bourbon and
fall over.
Great.
Yeah.
And then we've got our fan in the US of A, I think. Is that Amy? And she loves Andrew Shatkin.
Who doesn't?
I think you're hitting the point, Phil, that
Current grape.
Who doesn't love Andrew Shatkin?
I mean, you've just gone dead quiet again now, Phil. You were dead loud, and now you're dead quiet.
It's fine.
Back on the mic.
It's fine on my end. Is that it?
I don't know what you're saying. He's just whispering in the microphone. Oh, is it because Ben's got his microphone dead close and he's picking up everything?
No,
it is. No. Why is it never changing to Phil?
I don't know. Hello. So yeah, become a producer. Go to the website armsinquisition.com and click on the How to Become a Producer tab. We've got a birthday shout out this week For Steph Nosnodge.
All right.
Steph Nosnodge, 21 again, yesterday.
For the 19th time.
Happy birthday.
How else do you become a producer?
Ben, go.
Give us some coin.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil. That
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty.
That's right, cough up.
Yeah, cough it up. Cough up a coin. Toss us a fucking coin via PayPal. It's not hard.
1 coin by post.
If you find this thing that we do, if you find this valuable, return some value. How much is a coffee at Costa or Starbucks or any of these rip-off places?
£8, I don't know. It's probably a £5, right, by now?
I don't go to him, so I don't know. Is it a £5?
£4 or £5.
Okay, so, once a month, instead of dropping 5 coins at Costa, chuck it our way.
Well, I'm not sharing a coffee in these COVID times, so £15 our way will buy us our own individual coffees. And we'll put your name on the cup. Just to confuse things.
I should mention I was on another podcast this week.
Oh.
Moonlighting.
Yep, I was on Never a Straight Answer.
Okay, how was it?
NASA, Never a Straight Answer, so I should give a shout out to Gaz and Taylor. So it was nice to meet them, talk to them. We talked about secret societies, Illuminatus.
Did you?
Yeah, New World Order, Bilderbergs,
right.
Freemasons, Templars, all that stuff. So check out their podcast. They're local as well. Manchester.
Good.
So I'll put a link. I don't know when it's going live. I think they're going to send me a message when it goes out. So I'll link it up and put it on social media if you want to listen to that. But in the meantime, check them out. I think they do one a week. So,
sounds good. Build-A-Bear. Conspiracy.
Okay, we better thank our producers for episode 152 then. Anne Laluni, Jamie Carter, Amy from Insta, Steph Nosnodge, Gav Scott, Raymond Jet Squad, Tambarista 2020, and Full Metal Keto as fuck. You're so amazing in your love.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil.
They are.
Yeah.
So amazing in their love.
Currant.
Grape.
You're wrong, and you're a grotesquely ugly freak.
I've been coming to terms with the fact that I am gay.
That's cool. Thank you. Thanks for your support for another week. And we'll move on, shall we?
Yeah, we best.
What time's it? New mix.
COVID-19 news.
This morning, as COVID cases mount across the country, the mass debate is intensifying.
People are very passionate on both sides of the great mass debate.
The partisan mass debate is heating up.
Mass debate's growing.
The president is trying to have us cover the mass debate.
CVS, Target, and Walgreens are getting in on the mass debate.
What on earth? More lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
The magic vaccine.
Oh!
It's just, super painful.
2 million people have to die.
Nice.
God, I think I nailed that.
You did.
It was smooth, that.
Yeah. With a few little pieces of COVID news, I think.
Okay.
What should we start with? I've got a clip from, Unheard, the pop-up YouTube channel. Lockdown TV, Unheard. They were talking to Jean-Francois Toussaint, who's a professor of physiology at the University of Paris and director of the IRMES public agency, public epidemiology, biology research group type thing. And he had some new information for me. I think this might raise a few eyebrows.
There's talk of curfews. There's talk of further lockdowns down the road. How do you think we should be responding to this increase in positive cases? What does a responsible government response look like?
Well, we have many historical points that have improved our knowledge so far. The first is that we have seen that this virus probably started to go around the world in the summer of 2019, getting out of China with the military games and with the touristic destination of many people getting out of China in the fall of 19. And then it needed some special condition to make the explosion that we have observed in February in Iran, in March in Italy, and then Spain and France and everywhere.
What's the special conditions then?
He describes it as like the conditions before a forest fire. You have to have fuel.
What's the fuel in this analogy?
In my interpretation, it would be the very mild flu season we had in the previous year.
Right.
So it'd be part of it, possibly. But
this military games.
Yeah, this is what I was getting at. He says it was spread at the military games in the summer.
Right. So how are they tracing back those cases then?
What do you mean?
How does he know that it started with the military games? How does he know the cases went back to,
I don't know,
summer last year when the sort of... We all know the government in China is probably lying about the exact cases and whatnot, but what's the evidence that it was spreading out of China in the summer? Or is it the summer game? Was it the Chinese games in China? Military games in China?
The military games, he says.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is that like the Olympics for the military?
Yes.
Or is it like war games? Yeah.
No, right the first time. Ian Lyons talked about it, didn't he?
Yeah.
He went to the military games in Canada.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah. It's sort of
military World Games in Wuhan 2019.
Get out of it. No.
Yeah. More athletes claim they contracted COVID-19 at military World Games in Wuhan.
In Wuhan.
Yeah, it's military athletics. It's not like wargaming. It's athletics, like you said, Olympics. But how many of these military Olympians would have been going to the food market, do you think? I don't know. It throws into question the whole Wuhan market thing to me.
What about the visiting the super secret lab?
I don't know. It's just we don't know, do we?
No.
We just don't know.
Luxembourg triathlete Olivier Georget said he fell ill with the flu and is now to undergo an antibody test this week to see if he's ever had COVID-19. He claimed that Wuhan was a ghost town when he went for a cycle in the city, while also saying that he had his temperature recorded on arrival at the airport, while athletes were told to wash their hands while entering the canteen. I had my temperature taken when I went through the Hong Kong-China border in December.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of out. It was known then, wasn't it?
No,
January.
It was New Year's Eve.
Late January, they announced public person-to-person transmission.
Ah, right, okay. Yep. So
this athlete's saying that he had temperature scans and hand cleanliness in summer.
Well,
something doesn't add up.
A ghost town.
We've got someone on the podcast here. His temperature checks in December.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy's saying summer. That's 6 months before.
Mm.
Someone isn't being truthful. Are they? Seems to me that they knew this was coming and they did fuck all for 6 months.
Well, they did a bit, didn't they? They just didn't tell anyone that you were doing anything.
Yeah.
You had to wash your hands before having something to eat, which you should do anyway.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll go on to the next. I've got a second clip from the same chappie. He goes on to talk about the negative effects of the lockdown and if there was any positive effects of the lockdown. I thought this was interesting.
Well, we have had with this isolation very impressive positive effect. It hasn't been demonstrated yet. And what we have seen from the Oxford study, and we will have another study published in a few weeks, perhaps, showing that there is no relation at all between the stringency of the lockdown and the effect on the mortality rate in the 188 countries in the world that have declared at least one case of COVID.
It depends what he's saying is the death rate. So if it's like a percentage, then...
Mortality rate, he says.
Yeah.
Not case fatality rate.
Oh.
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll find out when the study comes out. Well, Exhibit A is Sweden, isn't it? They have less excess deaths than us. And
they did nothing, right?
They banned... they encouraged, like, hand cleanliness, and they banned gatherings of over 50. Now it's 500. You can have gatherings up to 500. If you look at the streets of Stockholm, everyone's walking around, no masks, sat in cafes, life is normal. So we'll see.
Just got a live correction. The Wuhan games were in October, not in the summer. Military games. Slightly later on. But.
Right. I don't know.
Can you have the? Do you know if they've banned travel to Sweden and out?
Don't know.
Oh, you have to close the borders. I think that'd be a big thing. You could get rid of the virus in a country if you had a proper Chinese style chained inside your house, locked down for 2 weeks, and close the borders
forever.
Yeah,
you'd have to keep the the borders closed indefinitely,
like New Zealand,
until you've got some way of determining. Who can come in the country who's definitely not got it.
Seems to me that the lockdown only can only work in two circumstances. The first is to stop your health service being overwhelmed, and the second is to buy time until there's a treatment or vaccine. But I think I'm thinking that when this all comes out in the wash, we'll find, particularly for under 70-year-olds, that the lockdowns killed more people than the virus. But,
it seems that way, doesn't it? Especially if you look at cancer and all the rest of it. But I think it's a death rate not higher the older you get with cancer as well, kind of thing.
Yes. The thing is that cancer can affect people of all ages.
Yeah.
It's indiscriminate. Yeah. Whereas the virus doesn't seem to be. You can contract it at any age, but I sent you the revised CDC statistics for mortality stratified by age. And, if you're under 70, your mortality risk is really low. But we know that the lockdown is going to kill thousands of people in this country. We know it's going to kill between 20 and 50,000 of cancer alone. So, I despair, but,
Why, this is going to sound awful, but why are we protecting the very old people who probably would rather take that risk anyway than be locked in a care home, not seeing their families? They'd rather take that risk, and they're old.
Look at it this way.
At the expense of excess deaths in, 20 to 50-year-olds.
If you're 80 years old, 6 months is a large chunk of your remaining lifespan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but it's the point that you made earlier, isn't it, about the health service being overwhelmed? It's not necessarily protecting those old people, but it's if all the hospitals get clogged up for want of a better term, full of old people with COVID, then it's like what we've said a million times, isn't it? When a road traffic accident, instead of going to your local hospital because it's full, you have to go somewhere 10 or 20 minutes further, and there's less chance of you surviving or whatever, if you had treatment quicker.
But again,
that kind of thing, I guess.
Go to Sweden.
Yeah, makes sense.
Health service wasn't overwhelmed. we didn't use the Nightingales.
No.
They had to be mothballed. It's a balancing act, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
And we pressed the nuclear option.
Yeah.
It's tough, though, when you don't know what you're trying to balance.
I mean, at the start, I can sympathise because we didn't have enough information. We didn't know what the mortality rate was going to be. We didn't know how it was going to affect young people. People were comparing it to the Spanish flu of 1918 that wiped out 30 million people. We know now that it isn't that. But we're prolonging this agony and we're continuing with it. I don't know. They're backed into a corner, the politicians. So I don't know. It's getting a bit pressing that really. But I was listening to one of the podcasts I not often but regularly listen to is Jeff Norcott. Have you heard of him? He's a comedian. He's famously like the one of two conservative comedians that get regular work.
No.
British, sure.
Yeah. He's on, the Nish Kumar topical show on BBC Two.
The MASH report.
He's occasionally on there for a bit of balance. But he does a podcast called What Most People Think, which is quite good. And this week he had a fellow female comedian called Tanya Edwards on. And she was going on about the effects of constantly changing the rules and the laws. And I thought she made a really, really good point on this.
I think I mentioned this last week, but was sort of saying, when I grew up, people saying the Tories, they're right wing, they're secret fascists, right? They want to control us. So you sort of feel like this is the moment, right? This is the thing that I heard a lot from the left growing up, that the Tories are currently doing that thing. They're introducing measures without recourse to Parliament, announcing them on fucking LBC before it even gets in front of the Speaker. And
worse, they're changing them every week. So all of these things are disorientating and they're not fair either. So it completely undermines the rule of law. If I can randomly be arrested for something today or charged or fined for something today that last week was not illegal, that means that you're not just compelling me to behave in a certain way that has had no parliamentary scrutiny, but you're also compelling me to constantly keep myself updated on the whims of a madman.
Yes, that is a good point.
You can't disengage. You can't disengage from the media. You have to be watching it every day or every week to keep up with the latest changes. So you're getting fed this 50,000 cases by the middle of October. There's no escape from it because otherwise you end up breaking a fucking law because you're not up to date. I thought it was a really good point, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm largely disengaged. I don't watch it. I don't watch the news because it's so fucking depressing.
Disengaged.
I don't watch the news, but I read mainstream newspapers on my phone and stuff.
Do you use like the Google News thing?
Yeah,
and
what pops up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I do, yeah. I don't watch like the news at 6 or the news at 10 or anything anymore. Because it's just fucking constant, isn't it? This COVID thing has just been meat and drink. It's been meat and drink for them for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
They've loved it.
Brexit was petering out, wasn't it? So.
God, yeah. Are we not leaving at some point?
I don't know.
Yeah, end of the year.
Trying to brush it under the carpet, under the COVID.
COVID carpet.
Yeah, really.
Maybe it was Dominic Cummings released the Wuhan flu. So we could just put through whatever he wanted to on the old Brexit. Or leave with no deal.
He's got that bloated head syndrome from Theme Hospital. Did you ever play that?
No.
All right.
Do you know who he reminds me of?
It was a very popular video game.
Do you know who Dominic Cummings reminds me of?
No.
Open your mind. Open your mind.
It's from Total Recall.
Yeah, Quatto from Total Recall. All right, okay, moving on. Are you taking vitamin D? Vitamin D3?
Just my wife.
Get out of son.
No?
I
take a multivitamin. If it's in that, I don't know.
It's such low doses though in those vitamin pills that it's not going to have.
Are you saying it's pointless?
Well, nothing's pointless if you're getting a lift from it. I was going to say now. So is D3 the one you get from sunlight when you make it with your skin?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you say yeah?
Yeah.
I've been out in the sun today, so I've probably made loads.
Do you not
20
take
minutes in the nud at noon?
Ben, your family, do you not take vitamin D?
We've got some in the cupboard.
Right. Well, I would encourage you vehemently, and anyone who's listening, you need to be taking vitamin D every day.
What dose? How much?
Get a standalone.
Use?
Get a standalone. You can soon find out because you don't want to overdose on it. But if you go on the NHS website, they tell you that through autumn and winter, it's recommended that everyone in this country takes vitamin D supplement.
It is, yeah. When they're going to put it in the, I want to say put it in the water, but I mean fortify. Is it not encourage?
In curry.
No,
in curry.
You
yeah,
can't.
In curry. Put food manufacturers putting it in like frigging cornflakes or whatever.
Tiny levels. It's almost impossible to get the vitamin D levels you need from your diet unless you're eating a lot of oily fish.
Just put it in Big Macs. Everyone will get shitloads then.
There's another study came out this week showing, I might get the figures slightly wrong, but vitamin D deficiency increases your chance of being hospitalised by COVID by 50%.
Yeah, I read that.
Really?
Yeah. You need it it's part of your immune system. You need vitamin D for your immune system. And be aware that we've been told to stay indoors through most of the spring and summer. So we're already vitamin D deficient.
Oh, well, it depends, doesn't it? If you were lucky enough to have a garden like me, I was out in the garden for hours.
Yeah, it was sunny.
Yeah, and it's not going to be now because we're waning. We're in the autumn and the winter, so you should be taking it, all of you.
Right, okay.
All right, that's a fill.
Will it do you any harm?
I don't know.
It depends if I OD on it and go crazy.
I don't think you'll go crazy. Vitamin A, that's the one you're thinking of. Don't know OD on that. Melt your brain.
I do. Take enough of it.
I think you can take a lot of vitamin D before it causes you problems. But yeah, fine. I'll open the cupboard. I'll have a look.
Like one tablespoon of cod liver oil has a massive amount of vitamin D in it. So taking a vitamin D pill.
Sorry, is cod liver oil? Is it really made from cod's livers?
Yeah. They squeeze the fish directly into the valve.
Do cods even have livers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a serious question.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where it comes from.
Cod livers?
Well, cod swallow.
Otherwise, you need to be out in the sun for 20 minutes, 4 times a week, with your arms and your face exposed.
And your bare chest.
Yeah. Or well, obviously, it depends on the amount of melanin in your skin as well. So the more melanin you have in your skin, the less vitamin D you can absorb.
Darker skin, yes.
And we have heard that ethnic minorities have been hit harder by the COVID.
Right.
Could that be
I'd like to dispute that using some numbers I saw.
Oh.
So in Britain, we're told that the BAME population are more at risk. But then in countries, in African countries, in Middle Eastern countries, their death rates are lower than ours, even though their caseload is similar. And I thought, well, I suppose they're not minorities in those countries. Not that that would matter, biologically speaking, if that's what the argument is, that if you are from these areas,
yeah, you would expect a higher case fatality rate in sub-Saharan Africa or the Middle East.
Yeah, they're implying a genetic aspect, basically, aren't they? And that wouldn't seem to be the case if in the countries.
The thing is, what about average age? What's the average age in Ethiopia?
I don't know.
It's a lot lower than it is in Western Europe. So it's like there's no easy answers.
Even Iran, though, Iran and Saudi Arabia and all that.
Do you know what the other thing as well? In all those countries, a lot more sun.
Yeah,
there is.
See, Dr. Phil.
Yeah, we just
Put
don't.
it in the frigging cornflakes.
We just don't.
Something in the water. It's.
Oh. Do you want to have anything more on COVID, or do you want to move on to miscellaneous stuff?
It's miscellaneous all the way, Mr.
One of my favourite supermarket brands is having a revamp.
Aldi.
New this morning, Uncle Ben's is revealing the name change of its rice brand to Ben's Original. Its parent company dropped the logo after it was criticized as a racial stereotype. Since the 1940s, the rice boxes have featured a white-haired black man, often with a bow tie. Critics have said the image evokes servitude. New packaging for Ben's Original will hit stores next year.
Yeah, Uncle Ben's is going.
All right. Is
Just
it
Ben's?
I just assumed that it was like a black guy who came up with the rice.
Yeah, well, it was.
Oh, right.
As far as I know, it was. And then the guy whose face you can see, I believe he was a waiter in a local restaurant, and they used him as like the model for the packaging.
Right. Okay.
But
well, maybe then I suppose there is an element of servitude if he was a waiter.
But waiters aren't all black. You can have white waiters or black waiters.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
But I mean, what's your thing when you were growing up? You know, when your mum was taking you to Asda or Morrison's or whatever, and you saw Uncle Ben on the packet. What did you think?
Just a nice, friendly old black man.
Nice, friendly face, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's Uncle. It's Uncle Ben's.
Eat my rice.
This is a nice rice. It's Uncle's rice.
It's just, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if it's just playing into the woke agenda.
Yeah,
it
seems a bit
an
woke,
unnecessary
doesn't it?
change.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's not like it's like it doesn't seem like a caricature of like like a gollywog or something.
No.
You know what I mean?
That's just a friendly
Colonel
face.
Sanders, on the other hand, KFC guy, does look like a plantation owner. So,
Oh my God.
Yeah. He's a real person, though, isn't he? Him. I suppose.
So was Uncle Ben.
Yeah, Uncle Ben was.
Yeah. I've had this clip on the board for a couple of weeks now from trigonometry.
No. Are you working up the courage to play it or something?
Well, it's a bit. Is
it heavy?
It's heavy, yeah. You familiar with Douglas Murray? I think we talked about it with Shane on 150. It's the author of The Madness of Crowds.
Far from the madding crowd.
Talking head. But it sort of ties into the Uncle Ben thing, because he was going off on the whole woke agenda and what this is sort of playing into, and he has quite like a sobering warning for us about it all. I don't know, shall I play it?
Yeah.
Can do.
Cheer us up.
Got some fun stuff after this, but all right.
And it's the same in this country to a lesser extent. You think that most of white people are still the majority in this country. I hate talking about that. I hate the idea that we have to talk about white people and black people. But fine, if they force us to do that, let's just do the maths on that. White people remain the majority in this country. You think they are going to be happy to be told Your past was disgusting and reprehensible, and not just ordinarily reprehensible, but uniquely reprehensible. None of your forebears are of any worth. Your society didn't get anything that was good other than by stealing it. What you have now, you do not deserve. You should give it to other people. You should give it to other people who look like people to whom things were done in history, because you look like people who did some of the things that were done. We will ignore anything bad done by any other group of people other than you. You've got to do this for all the rest of time. Are you happy with that? You think you're going to win? You think that the British public's going to suck that up forever? You think that they're going to be willing to sit there and take it as they're told that our forebears all had the best imaginable time? You think that's going to work? Oh, it might work this year. It's not going to work for very much longer. And I can see exactly what the play is that comes back, which is, that's a shame. We had put an awful lot of faith in this pluralistic, multicultural ideal. Turns out it wasn't wanted. How do you unknit that without going to hell? These people are playing with the most dangerous elements of our society. And it's like seeing a child playing with a nuclear device. And we've got to stop that.
Heavy stuff.
Well, it lightens up a bit because he sounds a bit like Mark Corrigan from Peep Show going off on one.
David Mitchell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a warning in there.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing is you're giving fuel, aren't you? The way he frames it there is probably how
to extreme nationalism and fucking white supremacy. Yeah. Well, it's so divisive. That's why. Like Adam was talking before about things that bring us together, and that's what we're missing. We're constantly focusing on things that divide us, and it's not good for us. Look what's happening in the States. It's a fucking powder keg.
Yeah.
The Proud Boys are out again as well. Someone referred to them as Trump's brown shirts.
Who's that?
There's a group called the Proud Boys.
They're nothing though. You could probably put them in. You could probably fit them in this room. They're really. It's like the KKK. They fucking don't. They essentially don't exist. Look at what is it? The BNP. You know, put them on a platform. Put them on Question Time and destroy them there.
That worked very well.
Yeah. But, I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I don't think that sort of thing would work nowadays, though.
How do you mean?
I think if you gave a platform to... Like, if you tried the same thing again, I'm not even sure it would work. That destruction by sort of public flogging.
Discourse?
Yeah, I mean, it should work, but do you think it would be as effective in these times where everyone's kind of thinking... You
can't bomb an idea. You have to defeat an idea with a better idea. And if you just ignore it, shun it, it just goes underground and festers. And then it rises to the surface when things are polarised. You can't ignore this stuff. You have to... This is why we need speech, free speech. You have to be able to put these ideas down. But the part of the problem is we've abandoned MLK. Judging people by the content of the character. We're judging people by the skin. It's fucking got to stop. It has to stop, like you said. New York University the other week's reintroducing segregation. What the fuck? We're going backwards.
Yeah.
Anyway, rant over, because it upsets me. Really does.
Where's the fun stuff?
Well, there's a new drama out on Sundays on ITV. The Singapore Grip. Have you heard it?
Is that what I think it is?
Well, there's been some confusion over the title, and luckily Phil and Holly from This Morning are here to clear it up for us.
I think there's an economic explanation to it, but you might be enlightening
Do you?
me
Well,
about something
no,
else.
I don't think there is, because we talked this morning about how we were going to explain this, and we felt that it was our duty to explain it. How do we do this? And then we thought, well, the best thing to do is to actually get a doctor involved. So that's what we've done.
Always the best explanation.
Yeah. And so here, with your explanation, if you've been watching on Sundays and thinking, I don't know what it means, with your explanation, here is Dr. Zoe.
The Singapore grip is a sexual technique which involves the woman using her vaginal muscles to stimulate a man's penis during intercourse whilst they both remain stationary.
So you're quite happy that you're not the one that has to explain that?
Wow. Is that in episode 3? I haven't got there yet.
There you go.
There you go.
That's a Singapore grip.
Okay, so let's Google that later.
Oh dear. I've 2 more funny things. Have we any other new stuff to go through before we finish on the funny things?
There was a couple of things.
Oh, there you go.
No, there was I was just going to talk about the bosses ramping up remote surveillance for workers from home.
Oh, what's that about?
So there's a lot of bigger companies are looking into purchasing software that allows them to detect when people are on their computers, so that they can monitor who's at work when everyone's working from home, which I think is a bit shitty.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is Outlook does that anyway, doesn't it? If you have Outlook and it's on, it says that you're there.
Teams,
yeah.
Well, Teams does it, but I'm sure Outlook does it as well. It knows that you're logged on to Outlook.
It's all linked, but I mean, who's going to spend? You need someone to spend all day, or create an algorithm to say who's doing what when, and
yeah. I think is it not sometimes just a miscommunication between? Like, I read that article that you sent, and was it not something that management had said they'd brought it in because to stop unnecessary meetings of something?
Well, that's the excuse they'd say.
But then things can get misconstrued, can't they? It wouldn't take a stretch of the imagination for it to be used in that manner eventually.
Part of the report was someone was instituting like 9 a.m. opening of the day meetings. It's like a register, using it as like a register, so to make sure everyone was present.
That was the thing. Was that the thing to reduce unnecessary meetings, having that one at 9 or something?
Yeah, that was the rationale for doing it. But it's like Ben said, it'll all just be automated with an algorithm. They'll be able to measure your keys. They'll be able to count your keystrokes that you do every day.
Keystrokes, yeah.
I bet so. Yeah,
there's no escape. There's no escape from the algorithm.
Why can't you be measured on your performance outcomes?
Productivity.
It's too difficult to measure that. Productivity is what it should be.
I think the one good thing is working in NHS, you will never be able to afford any of these monitoring systems. And also implement them in a coherent and timely manner.
Yep.
They'll probably half roll it out and say, "Oh fuck, can't do it."
Didn't they famously try and roll out some new IT program a few years ago?
For the last 20 years, they've tried
some Windows 95.
They've tried to create a unified NHS database to get rid of paper records. Right. And the last attempt got up to £1 billion and they gave up.
Still paying for it.
And that was like a few years ago. They just stopped and said it got to $1 billion. It's supposed to cost like 200 million. And it went to 3, 5, 7, $1 billion.
I've not heard of Excel.
Giving up now.
Yeah, I mean, how difficult could it be just to build a program that?
It's because all different kinds of specialisms need different kinds of things from the databases. So all the databases are separate. Although I think there is one that, like the medical side might use, it's called EMIS, and we used to use it, but it was just rubbish for what we needed. So we have our own kind of database, and like, so you can pull details to automatically that fill in, you know, like your name and address and NHS number and things, but making them all talk to each other. I think that was the issue, basically.
I mean, other than like in a pandemic, why would you need to be able to access records from the other side of the country?
It's deficiencies. It's not necessarily that. It's basically, have you never been to a hospital and seen people pushing around trolleys worth of paper records? It's stopping that.
So it's just so it's more about digitizing the paper stuff.
And
it's robots stealing people's jobs.
Yeah, it's making it more efficient, isn't it? It's obviously, and the other thing is losing records. I bet it's a big thing. If it's all paper. Because I'm sure when I've been for like a medical point, or my wife has been something at the hospital to do with her eyes, I'm sure you went to reception and they gave you like a wad, and these were your notes, and you took them to your appointment and you brought them back or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I've got a fun medical fact. Did you know that most people have an above average number of arms? And the facts behind that, it's rubbish, really. It's just because some people are born with only one arm, but no one is ever born with 3 arms. The average number of arms across the entire population is less than 2. So most people have an above average number of arms.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
My wife was telling me a story I think she'd read on Reddit about chimera, I think it's called, when your body kind of absorbs someone else's DNA. We heard about this. So it happens in utero.
Chimera?
A twin.
Yes, you absorb a twin, basically. I don't like the embryonic stage, I don't know. And basically this woman had a baby, and something happened, and it ended up having a DNA test. And the test came back, and it said there's no way this DNA didn't match her DNA, basically. And eventually got down the line, and she was a chimera. She'd absorbed a twin, and her ovaries were her twin's ovaries. Or she had 4 ovaries, I don't know, something like that.
Wow. Like no teratoma or anything?
I don't know what that teratoma is, Ben.
So
it's like the remains of a partially absorbed twin. So you get like a tumour with teeth and...
Yeah, maybe. She might have had one, but that's the only bit of the story I heard. Yeah, so the ovaries weren't her ovaries, basically. They had different the eggs had different DNA.
Wow, so the ovaries are present in utero?
Well, no, they must have developed from that. The eggs appear, you're born with all your eggs, aren't you, as a woman?
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. So they're there in the womb.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hell's bells.
So weird stuff like that. I'm reading this book about mycelium neck, but it's about fungi, really. And he talks about how bacteria kind of absorb each one another's DNA, basically, horizontally, not just through breeding. So they can actually absorb it by kind of intermingling, basically.
They don't have any way of doing it any other way, because they reproduce asexually. They just split off. There's no way of you wouldn't ever get any other lineage of DNA in a colony. So it is interesting that how they do that, but it's a interesting adaptation, I guess.
Well, they're unique, aren't they? Mushrooms in the mycelium network, it's unique. Some people think they're like aliens, like they came on an asteroid or a comet.
It does talk about panspermia, and I'm starting to believe the panspermia thingy. But the thing is a lichen is symbiotic. It's a fungus and a bacteria, I think, together. And one can't exist without the other, basically.
One of the pioneers of panspermia is Professor
Shatkin.
No, the Indian name
Chakrabarti?
Can't remember his first name. His surname is Wickramasinghe. And he was a pioneer of panspermia in the 70s.
Right.
And he's still going strong. Still appears on podcasts. And he thinks that COVID came from space.
Wow, get him on our podcast.
He's big friends with George.
Oh, yeah.
Quaker George.
Right, okay.
So, yeah, the thing is, he's getting on in years, and I think he doesn't do a lot of appearances anymore. But Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe. So,
right.
Just see if he'll record a conversation and we can put it on.
Fit it in. Stop playing with your pen.
All of us, yeah.
Stop clicking your pen.
I think you'll find out it's
Oh, God. Stop it!
He's always doing something, isn't he?
What condition does he have, Matt? Is it OCD, that?
Busy hands.
It's just a bit of an idiot, isn't he?
Can you not diagnose him?
For fiddling around, he's probably preoccupied with his work, isn't he? Since he was like writing some fucking emails whilst Adam was talking for half an hour. So, stress probably.
Stress related.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would be the treatment?
What he does already, going for a walk when he can, basically, going on his bike. Frequent masturbation.
Chilling out, maxing, relaxing. Singapore.
Singapore sling.
Singapore grip.
Grip, sorry. Yeah, that's a cocktail, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Anyway, President of the free world, Donald Trump's been casting aspersions this week about Joe Mental's mental fitness again.
Joe Mental.
What?
You called him, that was a bit of a Freudian slip there, Joe Mental.
Joe Biden's physical and mental fitness, fatness. You know the one. So let's check it out.
What a voice. Have you ever tried opera? What a voice that everybody has. That's true. I wouldn't say it. She said, he has no idea where he is, but I would never say it. I won't say it. I refuse to say it. No, but don't underestimate him. Look, he's been doing this for 47 years. And I got a debate coming up with this guy. No, it's fine. You never know. You never know. They give him a big fat shot in the ass and he comes out. And for 2 hours, he's better than ever before. The problem is, what happens after that? Nah, we're going to ask for a drug test. We are. I'd like to have a drug test. Both of us. I'll take it. He'll take it. They give him a big fat shot in the ass and...
Oh, it's going to be car crash, isn't it? If we get into do that debate, it's just going to be annihilated. I think it was Nancy Pelosi again saying that
it shouldn't happen.
He can't, because he won't tell the truth. Donald Trump won't tell the truth. This was her excuse.
Not that I don't think he can't do it, but
yeah,
it's just so transparent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I've got one more clip. Unless we've got anything to add.
Nope.
Is Ben back doing emails now? Sorry, have we lost you? Have we lost you, Ben?
No,
do you know what? Actually, what he was using the corkscrew to stop him from doing emails.
Diversion technique.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So were you doing emails then?
No.
What were you doing then?
Just looking at my fingernails.
I don't believe you.
Actually do.
Stop doing work just for 2 hours.
I'm not.
Oh, fuck. Right, well, Emily Maitlis had a bit of a Freudian slip on Newsnight this week.
Did she?
Former Health Secretary Alan Johnson joins us down the line from Hull. Alan Johnson, I'm never going to recover from that now, am I?
Where's he? What?
Hang on. Let's hear it again.
Former Health Secretary Alan Johnson joins us down the line from hell, from Hull. Alan Johnson, I'm never going to recover from that now, am I?
Alan Johnson from hell.
Alan, yeah.
Oh dear. Well, 10:05.
Yeah, that's us.
Should we go?
Done. Yeah.
We spent.
Got some emails to write.
2 million people have to die.
Who's on next week?
Cometan.
Cometan. The return of Cometan next week.
The Omnidoxy 2.
Yeah. It should be good, that. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So
Astronaut in the time of COVID.
Yeah.
Probably the perfect religion for COVID.
Yeah. Right, we'll sign off then for this week. Thanks for listening.
Ta-ra.
Take care of yourselves and each other.
Write some reviews, please.
Yep.
Excuse me.
More lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
The magic vaccine.
Oh!
Great.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil, that
like a judgment day and terminating mode, like.
Here's more from Dick Pound.
I got hairy legs. I got hairy
cunt.
Because I'm literally a communist.
Can't have children with a whore.
Great.